black pain, now we free from them chains. Heavy hearts, but we moving through the rain. Three black brothers with the weight on their minds. Till we rise, till we shine, still we grind. From the darkness to the light we claim. Still humble in the struggle, still proud of our name.
Hello, welcome back to season 2, episode 7 and 8. This is going to be a good conversation. I have Luc with me here. He is a journalist, and he's going to be approaching the episode around just different topics that he sees that Black men might be struggling with in life. So go ahead and introduce yourself, where you're from and what you do.
Yes, hi Daron. My name is Luc Olinga. I am originally from Cameroon in West Africa. I've been living in New York for almost 8 years now. And yes, what I do is that I've been traveling in the country to meet with Black men, trying to understand what's going on in their head, currently. And that journey has really me understand that mental health, it's one of the big issues for Black men, and mostly because there are so many expectations. And on top of that, now you have the new white supremacists, going on, making some, whether they belong to, whether their place is in America or someone else.
Yeah, and talk about a lot of supremacy. What is your views on that in terms of how it affects Black people?
I believe what it does, from the people I've met, I've talked to, it looks like it brings them back to a place of our brothers, our Black men thought they have left. They thought that was fought and won. And now let's focus on something else, building the future. Now they left like we have to fight what our people before, the generation before us did. We have to do it again. And I believe that's tough because at the end of the day, you're already dealing with racism, and now you have to again go back and try even to fight for the basic things, the basic rights. That's tough. That's tough for many, many Black men I've talked to.
Yeah, my experience with and when we're talking about racism and things of that nature, there's a lot of men that have internal biases about being Black too. From what I in life, like, and not say any names, but some men that I'm very close friends with, like he was talking about, like they wish they wasn't Black, just because of all of the we have to endure in our life, and that's sad to hear hear that you wish you wasn't Black.
Very true. That's very true. I encountered that as well. I met a lot of mostly young Black men who didn't. It's not that they didn't want to be Black; they felt inferior. Like Black means being inferior to white folks.
And it is for a certain degree. Like when you think about our ancestors, slavery time, like that, they were beating, they couldn't learn, they were lesser than, they were spit on, like all these different things. That's really a mockery of Black women. We got to back and review history over time and see that it was horrible the way that they treated us. So when you look at it from that point of view, you understand there might be hesitancies. I wish I was a different race because we're at the bottom, pigeon toe in society, like less than. You might not think of ourselves less than, but society thinks of us less than. And so with that mentality, we have to learn affirmations to make ourselves better in life. Like we have to learn to not still be on the same level. We can read, we can write, we can think for ourselves now. We're not enslaved. But then there's also, and that just maybe felt like the system has been stacked against them, where they can't never get ahead because of the white supremacies and white groups, work environments, that they will never get ahead because the white man is always at the top. And he's going to keep you at the bottom, in a certain degree, to some capacity at the workplace environments. So
no, I agree.
So go ahead on that.
I believe you have a distinction that has to be made. Under my reporting, when you are in the south of the south part of the country, I believe you have that That's kind of approach is there from the many black men I spoke to while they're in New Orleans or South Carolina or North Carolina. This idea that yes, they are less than anything, and mostly they give up. They have already given up. They don't want to fight back because they believe the white men will always make the decision, and mostly with the white supremacists now. That's the way they believe. They have given up. That was really striking to me because it's infuriating to say to yourself, things are never going to change. And then there is another part where you are the coast, from California where I live, where uh, although white supremacist ideas have, they have become mainstream, people, the black men I spoke to want to fight. And the idea in that fight, how they approach it is like, anyway, it's not about fighting to be accepted in a white in white society. It's about how do we build our many communities and trying to figure out how we support each other instead of like trying to, my God, what will they think of me? Will they accept me? I want them to accept me. They, for them, mostly in the coast, they believe it's over. It will never happen anyway. It will never happen regardless whatever we do. For black men, you have to almost hide your personality. You have to hide who you are. If you are, when you end up in a, in what we call a what setting, in what, venue. And they don't want to do that anymore. Most don't want to do that anymore, and they believe in some way it's time for black community to build their own, to how they see, what they want. And that was, I like that. I like that idea as well. So you have that resignation in the South, and the coast were more into like, we want to build our own communities. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely do it with building your own communities because, you know, there were times for like, black men or we're not together as a whole as a race. We don't together like we really should. And that's a big problem. Because if we stood together and understood our power, there wouldn't be so many, divorces and there were so many, misunderstandings between the men and women. If we understood our king and queen power, and that is powerful. You know, I've dated a lot of black women, and that it's they want a certain man, and the black men want a certain number of a woman, but there's always going to be this disconnect that holds us back together from achieving success. And I think that's where men and women need to come together to understand that there's no divide woman. There might be in society, but if we use our powers for good instead of trying to get up over each other and manipulate each other and sabotage each other's successes, I feel like it would be better in the workplace environment as well too. In terms of the level up. If everybody stood up for each other and see the injustices that's going on and the racism power plays that happens in corporate America, then we can we can better come together as a society. But as long as women and men have this different mentalities, we can never come together as one whole race. It's always going to be that division between men and women. So speak about that.
Yeah. I believe for my reporting, what came up with the idea that for many black men, they have the impression and they're convinced that the system did everything to divide black and black women and black men. I haven't investigated this part where I heard that everything was done to empower black women by telling them basically, I need to invest. That's just reportedly, that's where the testimonies were, that to empower black women by telling a black woman that if you live alone with your kid, we will give you, some aid so of your man. That's what many, I would tell you, almost every black man I talked to when they were not young, were people of, over, 20 and yeah, saying almost the same thing, like the system did everything, get the black men out of the household. And that's something that's really a big wound, in for many black men, with black men, that's wounds about like they don't matter. They're not in the house, so they have to be out, because if they're out, the woman is going to receive, any aid they need. And I believe that's something that need to be addressed. And because as long as the black man you're going to talk to is going to tell you how they want community, about they want us to build that community, but at the end of the day, when you're going to ask them, what about, they say, oh, the system, they took the kid away from me, they took my, it always come up. It always come up. And I believe that's something we really have to address in our different black communities, trying to really understand that when a father want to be part of their kid, should be allowed to be part of their kid life. And I mean, there are different things. We have to make sure that it's not about violence, those kind of stuff, but we have to, how do we recreate it to give black fathers who, or black men who want to build a family with a black, how do we make sure that at some point they're not going to be kicked out, they're not going to feel like they're being kicked out because the woman needs some help from the government? I believe it's something we really, because it looks like I've heard a lot of black women saying, oh, this is not true, they don't want to say. It might not be true, but the narrative is out there for is sticking with me, and that's something we really have to talk about.
Yeah, and a lot of black women don't stay with black men is because maybe they deem that their work ethic is not good enough for them, or they don't have a higher enough income. And all of those things can be really true, but then it's also, when you look at jobs today, that's, you're working so that you don't really reap the benefits of your labor. And a person can be working in corporate 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and then they realize that maybe, it's time to move the company, and there's a lot of racism and there's a lot of power plays that happens within corporate America that prevents them from doing that, which then trickles down to their livelihood. And then if their livelihood is affecting, their relationship between man and woman is going to be affected, because the woman might think, well, you're not bringing home enough money, or the man might think, you're not doing your part because I'm working more hours busting my butt, and you're not contributing to the household either. So I think then that's where people start to say, coming into the topic of what we're going to talk about now, is like burnout. Like a lot of men burn out because they working so hard and seeing little for their success. Now, that's not with all men. There are very successful men, but we're talking about the average man, that's maybe just getting the workforce, or just being in there for like maybe 1 or 2 entry level. Not the ones that's been there for a while, like 10, 15 years. The ones that's at the lower level with basic pay, under $20 an hour. If they feel like they're not being compensated for that, then they're going to get angry, they're going to get mad, and they're just not going to be able to keep working in that type of environment. And it might even lead to stressful situations between the work environment, like between the coworker, the managers and the CEOs and stuff like that. So when we talk about the burnout topic, it's like men are just so tired of working so hard, and they don't see that they're getting anywhere. And I'm one of them, working in corporate so many years, and I had to quit that and start over, and into a new completely industry, in education. So I speak on how can jobs should need to go ahead and pay us more for our worth, and stop, stifling the money to happen in order for, things to get better. So, the work environment better, and then hopefully the relationships will get better.
For me, I would think that what we should be doing, I believe in the black community, we should maybe start talking about like what do you mean by success? I believe that's a big issue. What do you mean by success? And then the second one is a man being. We have this idea in black community that the man has to do this and has to do this and has to do this. The men have to keep his it's just, you go to the workplace, you do the same thing. it's rare to see a black man complaining in the workplace. Even though you're still trying to work twice harder than anyone else. Don't say anything, because we've learned that we don't have to complain. That complaining is being weak, is being vulnerable. So we never complain where we should be complaining. That's what you're going to see from white male mostly believe that they have done more than anyone, who always believe that they have to be promoted, and they speak out, they always talk about it. And we never, I believe, because we believe as black men that talking about it, saying, oh, I believe I should be promoted, is like almost like begging or complaining, which is not. At some point, you have to tell people, this is what I'm worth, and this is what I've done, and I believe I've done this, and that means something more. And we never do that. And this is not. I don't believe. I believe it's part of the systemic, systemic racism. At the same time, also our own culture, where we expect a man to always look strong without having to say a word, without saying, I believe I should have more, I believe I deserve more. You just have to take it. The problem is that the workplace, because of the way it's built, its structure, you always have the white male over, always give the job to someone who looks like them, because they share, the same kind of, we don't have, So I believe we have to start. How do we make sure that when we have kids, boys, it's not about saying to boys to complain, is to say, when you did, for example, you were supposed to cut, let's say, wood. When you're done, you say, I'm done with the wood. Look at the job. I did a great job. Those kind of will make, when that boy will grow up and will go to the workplace, he will be able to ask for what he deserves. I mean, I did. How many times I've heard black men have talked to, telling to me, I was people, and I was doing all the job, and then they brought that young white boy. He arrived like 23 or 24. They asked me to train him, and and then they promoted him, and they asked me to be his deputy. I mean, that is not so many times. They asked me to be his deputy. I train him, and I am doing the job, and I am his deputy, and he has the main role. Because we have to ask for that and say, this is it. And I believe that's where it's going to start. It's a two-way street. Our own tradition, and also being able to question the establishment by asking for what we believe it's not owed to us, but what we deserve, because we work hard for that. You work hard, you made it happen. It has to be, and if they don't, we also have to be able to say, I'm leaving, like you did. I'm done. I quit. No, a quitter doesn't mean. I believe that's another issue we have with black men. That, oh, you quit, you're a quitter. Oh, you want this? No, you have to be able to say stop. I believe I deserve the position. You gave it to someone else. No, I'm done.
Yeah, and we have to know our worth. We have to know our worth, so then we can be able to negotiate better and understand the terms of agreement and how much the white man is going to pay us ultimately, right? We have to know how to negotiate our worth. We have to know our worth, and we have to stand firm on our worth. If we don't know those three things, then we're going to always get underappreciated and definitely underpaid.
Oh, yes.
And that's where being vocal about this to your managers or the CEOs, they always ask for suggestions, but very little people put in that suggestion box. You can't complain about a system that's broken if you don't want to fix it.
Yes.
Now, given it's not up to us to fix the broken system, it has to be the white man and all of the partners all together, and even the lower paying, even below, that's probably getting paid less than the black man, which is black women. They even get paid less than us. Yeah. And so it has to be a unified system where we can be able to openly talk about these things in the entire workplace environment without it being Oh, you're difficult to work with. You should be glad that I'm paying you even that amount just because you're here. What sense does that make? I should just be glad to accept an amount when I've been here 10 or 15 years and my partner and my counterparts are here less time than me? Make it make sense, because it doesn't make sense to me. I'm not going to just accept anything. I'm going to be able to stand on my belief and my firm belief of what I know is right. We always talk about like having ethics. You can't tell someone more for less time that they put in.
Mm.
You could, but it's wrong.
Oh.
It's wrong and it's not right. So if men open up their voices and say, I think we need to have a conversation about the pay structure here. I think we need to work trying to figure out a better workplace environment for all of us so we can all eat. But of course, we know that will never happen because the other counterparts don't want that to happen. They want us to keep being down at this lower level, and they're just eating and having a good time in their life while we're struggling paying the damn bills. You know, we barely can get a day.
Yes.
And and there's some that goes on too, not just in corporate America, but there's also like like I was internal competition between our black counterpart, like between black on black. That can happen in culture too. Like, one woman against another woman for that same position. And of course, they only can hire one person. So who do you think they're going to hire? And then that creates dramatic, and that creates within the workplace because, like, why did she get hired? Why did he get hired? I have more experience. So how do you play on that when it's between black, just between black and white individuals? How do you deal with that dynamic?
I believe at the end of the day is also about is again the system. The system has always told us that there is only one seat at the table for us. There is no two seats. There will never be three seats, only one. And we accepted it. We accepted that there will always be only one seat for people who look like us. And that's the issue. So we always thought, there is only one seat, so I have to be the one to get it. Instead of saying, how do we make sure that there is another seat for us? And I believe that's the issue. I was thinking, I'm a French citizen. When I live in Paris, there was this thing, because in Paris itself, the city, downtown, America, people would say downtown. You don't see, people who look like me usually don't live there. You have some, but they don't really live there. They live in the suburbs. The suburbs are different from the US. In Europe, mostly in France, the suburbs are really for immigrants and poor people who are, poor. That's the way it's tried. So the city, sometimes when you live in the city, you kind of believe like you're accepted by the white, which is not make you feel that way. The society is built in a way that you feel like you're lucky, which it shouldn't be. You can afford it to live wherever you want to live. So if you are a black person, you can afford to live in Paris, downtown, why should you feel lucky? You shouldn't feel lucky, because white people don't feel lucky. They believe it's normal for them to live there. And long story short, one of my best friends, who is black like me, one of the top spot in Lille, Saint Louis. His building is next to the building bought by the Emir of Qatar. He bought one of the world. He bought that building next to his. And my friend Charles, that's his name, almost felt like he was white in a way that he was always the white person in the room, and he believed he was lucky to be there. At some point, he didn't want other black people to come in. It would be going to be because he thought that they only allow one black person. So there is no way he will let another black person come. And we had that. I was shocked at the time, and we had that discussion with when in 2020 we felt the protest. Everyone was thinking about what did we do wrong, what did we because it was not just the white, it's also part of us. Some people like us who will be like me working as a journalist in newsrooms. Sometimes I didn't really fight for some of our stories to be in that way. In that regard, I believe I was guilty. And I was talking with him, and then he was telling me then about the past when we were in Paris. And I said to him, I noticed it. Just watching you, I couldn't believe what I was hearing you saying or how you acted. Like you were close, you became a gatekeeper. It was not, you didn't want another black person to come in. And I don't understand why. And he said to me, oh, I thought at the time that if another black person will come in, I will be kicked out. I'm like, no, Charles, it should not have been that way. You should have been, okay, I'm here now. I'm going to have to make sure that I bring other black people in. That's the way you changing. And that's why you tell them that it's not just one seat. We need more than one seat. The same way you guys have more than 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. I mean, we need this. It's not about equity or equality. I believe at some point we also have said it's also about we said about worth. I deserve it. Why shouldn't I have that? Why not?
And
Why?
I think also, instead of having the table, we can build our own tables. Yes. We can build our businesses, what I'm trying to do. When I'm building up this business, it's been really, profitable for me to be able to do whatever I wanted to do, and not just having to on other people, financially. There's a lot of investments and a lot of different ways you can start your businesses that people will invest. You don't have to have a certain number of subscribers, and I think a lot of people fail to realize that you can get different loans, of course, that back, but you're investing in yourself for a greater return. So if you small business loans, or you start off with maybe even saving the paycheck that you get every single year until it adds up to 20 grand. You don't need much to start a business. But as you bring more people on and more functions, you will need more help, and you will need to pay them because they're not working for free. But it's just like, learn to start how we can start servicing ourselves and stop fighting for the seat at the table. You don't need a seat at a table when you can create your own damn table. Stop begging for come save you, because it's just not going to get any better. It's not the way the world is moving right now. It's not going to get any better. So you have to start figuring out ways to hustle and make your money and to grow your own things in life, because we're fighting for people that don't even care about us. The white people just sitting back and laughing at the black people for fighting for that one role. No. And you're not going to maybe even be there 10 or 15 years. For one role you're fighting for. No.
Agree.
You're not going to keep fighting for that. What we need to do, we need to develop a business plan. We need to talk to people, our friends and our family that can probably help us out, explore other avenues, because you cannot keep competing. It's detrimental to your own self-worth. Because you're always going to have that mentality. If somebody else takes that position, it makes you less of a person, but it does not make you less of a person. God has something new. You just have to realize and unlock it. You have to use your brain up here. God didn't just tell us we can work a job for our entire lives and think that's it for us. No, that's the old mentality. Our grandparents and grandparents after that. That's how they wanted to do it.
Mm.
We are a new generation, and we're not going to be a slave to the system any longer. So I say this to say that to all my Black kings and queens, do not settle for wherever you're at in life. There is more to come, and you will get it. And you don't have to step on no one's shoes. You don't have to manipulate. You don't have to backstab anyone to get to the top. Because just like how you got to the top, you can go right back down to the bottom if it all falls apart. So don't do that. And then the last thing I wanted to kind of say to wrap up this conversation here, in the last 4 minutes here, I wanted to talk about like how can Black men overcome, or just Black people in general, overcome the burnout? Besides building business of their own or working on an exit plan, what other things can they do to, if maybe they don't have money to invest in themselves, what other things can they do to, you know, someone stay sane, you know, in relationships or work environments? What can they do if they're feeling like, you know, this is it out from everything?
I believe it's about talking. I believe you have to talking to another Black man is always, welcome, because you know that they are going through the same thing or they've been through that and they will help you. I believe being able to say it, to voice it. There are Black men everywhere. Sometimes, we don't know where, hey man, but if you really stop the other one, you ask them, you're going to figure it out. And you're going to find out that they're like you. I believe it's really important to open up. And also, that's how we're going to build. Because if I come to you, I'm like, oh my God, I've been expecting this promotion, and you went to someone else. You say, oh, it happened to me 2 years ago. I'm like, okay, but what do you do? I do this, and then we can do the same. And why not? We can build something together. I found that when I was in Oakland, that's where so many Black men was starting to build their own community. And what happened is that the way they explained it to me, one went through mental health because he didn't get a promotion, and he went, he was spending time in the neighborhood, and another one came and say hi, and they start talking, and they said, oh, there might be other people like us. And they were right. There were many other Black men like them. So they started hiking. What they said to that, they decided to organize a hike every Saturday. It went from 3-4 people to now more than 300 Black men coming, around the Bay Area to hike together. That way, they find out that they can make stops during the hike and talk about what some have project. How could you help? What could you bring to the project and everything? And they figured out that they were coming from different line of work. And when you have that, you can build a lot of things together, and you can talk and they can exchange fatherhood, being single. And it was really interesting, but it happened because one of them went to the other and said, hi, I'm going through a tough time. And I believe talking will help, opening up, voicing, not just, oh, bro, no. I believe you have to go beyond the broad thing. Really, that brotherhood has to be expressed.
Yeah, I do believe so. I do thank you for being on here, Luc. It's been a pleasure to you here. If you ever want to click on, you're free to do that. We believe we met on LinkedIn. So if you, the episode won't be out for a little while, but I will send you the link so you can share with your friends and family. Mm-hmm. And then also, if you ever have any friends or family that wants to come on, Black men specifically, send them my way and we can get them scheduled.
I will. Thank you, Daron. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks. Have a good one.